My Name is Tani, Chapter 1 to 4. Prologue. My name is Tani, and my family says I like to ask a lot of questions. They're right. I like puzzles. I like riddles. I like trying to figure out why things happen and how things work. But things have been different lately. Instead of asking the questions, I've been the one trying to answer them. A lot of people have wanted to know all kinds of things about me and my life. They want to know what life was like for me and how I feel about the way things have changed. They want me to tell my story, and I want to tell it, but there's never enough time to say everything that's in my head. So this book is going to be my answer. But if I'm going to tell you my story, I need to start by saying that I don't remember much about Nigeria. I know that I was 6 years old when these really bad people called Boko Haram tried to kill my dad and we had to leave, but honestly, I was asleep most of the times they came looking for my dad, so you'd have to ask him about that. What I do remember about life in Nigeria is playing soccer and my brother, Austin, trying to teach me chess, and how one day I was watching the news on the TV and there was this airplane pilot who had just done something amazing. He was Nigerian like me, and there must have been a really serious problem with the plane because everyone was excited about the fact that he had landed safely and everyone survived. From that moment on, I wanted to be a pilot. It's not because of money though. Being a pilot makes you rich, but I don't mean money rich. I liked the idea of doing something like that to help people. I remember a lot about life in America. Like how when we moved to New York I learned about chess, properly this time, and discovered that the very best players in the world are called grandmasters, and so, from then on, I started to think that it might be good to be a grandmaster too. And then one day Coach Sean Martinez actually took me to meet Fabiano Caruana, who is the #2 chess player in the whole world. He shook my hand and we talked, and from that moment on, I decided that I definitely wanted to be a grandmaster. And then something happened. I won a chess competition and lots of people wanted to talk to me. It wasn't just people from New York or even America. People from all over the world wanted to know my story. Some of them still do. A lot of the people I have spoken to ask me about chess. They say things like, "How has chess changed your life?" Or, "What do you like most about playing chess?" I mostly give them the same answer to both questions, which is that chess has taught me how to do deep thinking. Sometimes people laugh when they hear me say that, but I don't see how it's very funny. The more I think about all this, the more I know that I can't answer either of those questions quickly. I need a lot more than 1 minute to be able to explain everything. And I don't think I can even do it all myself because there's so much that I don't remember. So the best way to tell my story is to have my parents help me. They know all the details of everything that's happened, and they're also my heroes. None of this would have even happened if it hadn't been for them. I would have asked Austin to help tell the story, too, but he likes basketball a lot more than he likes writing. But he's still my hero as well. After I won the chess tournament and spoke to all those people, life changed really quickly for all of us. Recently, I've been thinking again about being a pilot. Since talking to everyone, I now know that there are a lot of places I've not been to, and if I were a pilot, maybe I could go see them. I could fly to China, Japan, Arizona, Kentucky, Turkey, and England. I want to go to these places and live there for maybe one whole year or maybe just 5 months. I read in a book that the average person lives to be 71 years old, but I think I'm not going to live the average. I think I'm going to live to be more than 100. So maybe I'll do both, be a grandmaster and a pilot too. I'd like that. I don't know what I'm going to be. My dad says that's okay. But I do know this much. I believe in miracles. Part 1. When Danger Knocks. 1. The day school closed early. Tani. At first, I was happy when they sent us home from school early. I think I was in 1st grade and it was before Christmas time. What I know for sure is that after morning recess, the teachers told us school was done for the day and that we should leave. Wow, that was good news. You would have thought the teachers would have been happy about getting out of school early, too, but they weren't. They all looked serious as they whispered together. They hurried us out into the yard and stood watching us, making sure we stayed behind the locked gates until our parents came to fetch us. Austin and I had to wait for ages until Mom came, but it didn't matter. We were still happy. Austin even let me sit next to him on the bench. And when we got home, we played soccer in the courtyard with some friends. Soccer is not an easy game when you're little and you're playing your big brother and his friends who are way taller than you. And it's really hard when they don't pass you the ball, even though you stand on the side and wave your arms and shout over and over to them, "Hey, pass me the ball. I'm over here. Pass it to me. Pass it." They just ignored me. I shouted louder, but they still ignored me. Then, even though I really didn't want to, I started to cry. I couldn't stop the tears. So that was when a really good day stopped being so good after all. I went inside and saw Mom. Granddad was there too. They both looked as serious as the teachers looked. I didn't like the fact that I was crying, but I was really upset about the soccer game. I told Mom about Austin and his friends not passing the ball to me, and she said she'd go speak to them. But she didn't. She just gave me a hug while she kept talking with Granddad about the school closing early. I was only half listening, but when Granddad asked, "How long is it closed for?" and Mom said, "I don't know," I sat up. I asked, "What do you mean? Is there school tomorrow?" Mom shook her head and said, "It's closed for a while. Just until." She didn't finish her sentence. I didn't mind. I was running outside again, ready to tell the others this great news. The rest of the day was good. Really good. Everyone was so happy about school being closed, and for a long time I played soccer, and they even passed the ball to me 4 times. I didn't score any goals, but it was still fun. Later, when our friends had gone and it had gotten dark and the power hadn't cut out for once, we were all in the living room. Austin was doing his homework and Mom and Dad were watching the TV news. I don't really like TV too much, so I was probably playing or reading or something like that. The man on TV said a word that made me stop whatever I was doing and listen. It was a word that I had heard for the first time earlier that day. When Dad quickly turned off the TV, I said, "Dad, what's Boko Haram?" He only looked at me for a really short time and then did the thing he does where he frowns and shakes his head. When he does that, it always reminds me of someone trying to shake a fly from his face without using his hands. He said, "It is nothing that you need to worry about. Why do you ask?" And I said, "It's what the teachers were all talking about today before they sent us home." "Is it like Christmas? Is that why they've closed the school?" He looked at Mom, then back at me. He spoke in a very serious way. "No. I tell you, Tani, this is not something you should worry about. And it's bedtime now. When Dad sends us to bed, there's no point arguing." So I went straight away. Whatever Boko Haram was, I liked it. Hopefully, there would be some more of it soon so that we would get even more time off from school. 2. Fear in a flash drive. Aloud. Kaod, my husband, knows very little about chess. But he knows all about sacrifice. He knows that sometimes you must be willing to lose something precious in order to protect what you hold closest to your heart. He knows what it is to face an opponent who is ruthless, brutal, and hungry for your destruction. And he knows that in life there are moments when the only way to make it through to the victory that lies ahead is to be prepared to stand and fight until the very last breath. It all started on what I thought was an ordinary day, an ordinary December day in the Nigerian capital city of Abuja. I had returned home from my job at the bank at around 4 in the afternoon, collecting Austin and Tani from school on the way. They were playing soccer in the courtyard with friends while I spent a final few hours with my father, who had been staying with us for 2 weeks and was due to return home to his wives that day. That's right, his wives. As was the custom for many Muslim men of his age in Nigeria, my father was a polygamist, with 4 wives and 1 mistress. I know this sounds strange to an American reader, but he really was a great husband to all of the women he lived with and a great father to every single one of his 20 children. He was loyal to his faith and attended the mosque, but he was no fanatic. As his daughters, we were cultural Muslims more than religious ones. So when I, like all of my sisters, fell in love with a Christian man and told my father that I was going to be baptized, he did not discriminate or complain at all. He simply gave us the freedom to choose who we wanted to marry, and he continued to treat each and every one of us with the same love and kindness that he had always shown. My father and I stood in the kitchen, smiling at the sounds that drifted on the hot breeze flowing in from outside. It was the same story every time Austin, Tani, and their friends played soccer. Apart from the occasional crash as the ball hit the metal fence, the loudest noise was Tani shouting over and over for someone to pass him the ball. Like many 5-year-old boys, when Tani decided to do something, he threw every ounce of himself into it. And like his peers, he struggled when he could not bend other people to his will. So, eventually, as was custom, Tani came into the kitchen. "They won't pass it to me," he complained. "I tried doing what you said and asked them for the ball, but they didn't listen. Why don't they pass?" This is Tani's difference from other kids. He asks more questions than any person I have ever met. When he finds something in life that interests him but that he doesn't understand, he simply will not rest until his curiosity is satisfied. And if you ever give him an answer that he tests and finds faulty, you can be sure that he'll be back with more questions. I was about to try to answer his soccer questions when I heard the front door open and my husband came in and greeted us all. Aoud, whose name rhymes with coyote, was supposed to be in a rush. He had a meeting in the old capital city, Lagos, early the next morning, and he had planned to make the short flight from Abuja that evening. So I was surprised when Aoud, after he finished talking to Tani about the art of getting people to cooperate in a team sport and sent him back out to play, sat down at the table, pulled out his laptop, and plugged in a flash drive. "For men came to the shop this afternoon," he said when he saw me looking at him questioningly. "They want 25,000 posters printed." I said, nodding. Aoud's printing business was thriving, and it was not unusual for an order of this size to come out of nowhere like this. Even so, I was thankful. With 13 staff members at the shop, Aoud needed a steady flow of business to keep things healthy. Only, Aoud suddenly did not look so healthy. He was sitting, frozen, staring at the screen. "What is it?" I asked. He tilted his head up toward me, but his eyes stayed wide, locked on the screen. "Look," he said, spinning the laptop around, before calling for my father to come and join us. Even though I could not read it properly, I recognized the Arabic writing immediately. Worse, though, was the logo beneath it, 2 AK-47s on either side of a thick book with a black and white flag flying over the top. There was not a single person in Nigeria at the time who would not have recognized it. I stared at Aoud. He confirmed my fears with a nod as my father joined us. And while Aoud and I had been quiet, my father immediately raised his voice. "What are you doing working for people like this, son?" "Dad, I am not working for them," he said. "For men just came to the shop this afternoon. I have never met them before in my life." "Can you read it?" Of course, I can read it. It says, "No to Western education and kill all Christians." And you know who they are, don't you? You recognize the logo. Boko Haram. We stayed silent for the longest time. Even if Tani were complaining to his brother outside, I don't think we would have heard him. Fear had drained all sound from the room. Eventually, it was my father who spoke. "What are you going to do?" My husband comes from a long line of wise and noble men. There is royalty in his ancestry, and he built a successful business out of nothing in just a few years. When we lived in Nigeria, his opinion was widely sought by friends and colleagues throughout the city, and he always knew what to do. He was one of the few people on the planet who could answer Tani's questions. But for the first time that I could ever remember, Tani Adewumi was lost. He was silent. He looked fearful. He pulled the flash drive out of his laptop and put it in his pocket. "I have to go now." 3. A dangerous dilemma. Aoud. When my wife and I named our sons, we chose carefully. Our firstborn, Austin, was named Adesina. It means God opens doors to us. The world now knows our second son as Tani, but Tanitoluwa means who is like God. When we chose them, we wanted names that reflected the way we saw the world. We had no idea how significant those names would become. I did not rest well the night I flew to Lagos. From the moment I plugged the flash drive into my laptop at home and opened the poster file, I was robbed of all peace. I was not alone. Oluwatoyin felt the same way. So did her father. KO'd, he said as I put my laptop in my bag, "Son, you should have nothing more to do with this job. Forget they ever visited you. But they have an appointment to see me tomorrow when I get back from Lagos. Then have your secretary cancel it. They did not leave a number. Then shut your shop for the day. They will come back. Then do not go to work tomorrow and have your secretary tell them you are unavailable when they arrive. She can tell them you are sick. You know what these men are like. They are killers, and now that you know their plans, have seen their faces, and can easily identify them, they will make you a target. You must do everything possible to avoid them." I understood why he was saying this. He knew better than I did how dangerous Boko Haram was. But I was not convinced that I could simply hide and hope to be left alone. "No, Dad," I said as I walked out to the car. "I must face them myself." I had planned to use the short flight to Lagos to prepare my quotation for the job. As I sat on the plane, I had no pen in my hand, no piece of paper resting on the plastic tray in front of me, but I was thinking about the men and the poster all the same. And I was trying my best to calculate how I could remove myself from the equation and cause them to forget all about me. 500 miles later, I finally had a plan. As soon as I landed, I put it into action. I phoned my shop manager and informed him not to start up any machines the next day. I told my secretary that when the 4 gentlemen who had visited earlier that day returned the next morning, she should show them straight into my office. And I told myself that this was the only way, that only by facing them myself would I be able to put an end to it. After lying awake most of the night and then fighting the urge to be distracted during my 7 o'clock meeting the next morning, I took the hour-long flight back to Abuja. I wanted to get to my shop quickly, but I was also dreading the moment the 4 men would arrive. The moment I walked into the shop, it felt wrong. With 13 people employed there, the whole place was usually full of sound. People would be laughing and calling out over the noise of the machines as they produced books, posters, and everything else. But on that day in late December, there was nothing. No noise, no chaos. No laughter, no shouts. Just silence. I had been careful not to tell my team about the previous day's visit. I did not want them letting their nerves or their fear take over, but they knew when I gave the order to turn everything off that something was wrong. I talked a little with some of the team, then went to my office. I wanted to be ready to receive the men. I did not want them in my shop a second longer than was absolutely necessary. On the wall above my desk was a cross. It had always been there, and it was as important to me as the pictures of Oluwatoyin and the boys on my desk. But for a moment, I have to confess that I considered removing it. I wondered how wise it was to advertise that I was one of the very people whose death their poster was calling for. But what if they had seen it the day before and noticed that I had taken it down overnight? If that happened, they'd know for sure that I had looked at their poster and that I knew their secret. Besides, my father had always taught me well. Know where you come from, he'd said so many times. Never be ashamed of who you are. Hold yourself with dignity. Stand firm. So I left the cross in place and waited. 10:30 a.m. The time they were supposed to arrive. There was no sign of them. I rehearsed what I was going to say. Over and over I said the words in my head, repeating them until they started to lose their meaning. 10:41 a.m. Still nothing. I took the flash drive out of my pocket and placed it on the desk. I wanted it, and the men, gone as soon as possible. I closed my eyes, but not because I was tired. Sleep was the last thing on my mind. But at least closing my eyes helped to distract me, if only for a few seconds. 10:43 a.m. Nothing. I grabbed the flash drive and put it back in my pocket. And then, from the other side of my door, I could hear voices. Deep and rich, those voices uttered their words sparingly. I knew even before my secretary opened my door and showed them in who was there, the same 4 men from yesterday. As before, there was a younger, smaller, smiling man who said little, an older, heavier man who did most of the talking, and 2 others who stood at the back and guarded the door. I stood and offered the usual welcome for a morning visitor. I offered them a seat and some tea, inquired of their health, and asked if they had slept well. None of them wanted to sit, to drink, or to talk. As before, the larger man spoke first. "Do you have a price for us?" I tried to adopt my most regretful smile. "I am sorry to tell you that I do not." A glance passed between him and the smaller man. They both stiffened. "The machines are broken," I said. "I am very sorry, but Broken? How can you say that? We both heard them when we came yesterday." "I know. They were working well, but they just died soon after you left. When we tried to turn them on this morning, nothing happened. We have called the engineers, but they have not even replied yet. It is going to be some time before we are able to print again." They all stared at me. "I am sorry," I said as I dug my hand into my pocket. "Of course, knowing that you want the job completed urgently and that I could not therefore assist you, I did not look at your flash drive. Here it is." I placed the flash drive on my desk. The silence remained for some time. When it broke, it was the smaller man who spoke. His voice was hard, like iron. "You're stupid if you think we believe you. Your machines were working yesterday. We demand that you do the job." "Please," I said, trying my best to appear reasonable and sincere. "I'm a businessman. I like to make money. And I particularly like it when clients come to me without me having to go and look for the work. So to have you in here and my machines not working is a matter of great frustration for me. But what can I do? All I can suggest is that you visit some of the other shops farther down the road. There are plenty of them there, and they will all be happy to serve you." I motioned to the door, but none of them moved. I was stuck. I'd thought that I could be reasonable and convincing and create a little story that they could play along with. But I hadn't planned for this, to have 4 militant Islamic fanatics in my office, refusing to leave. I needed to think of something fast. "Please," I said, my hands out wide, "come with me. I would like to show you something." They looked wary, but they followed eventually. "I don't usually let clients come back here," I said as I led them into the machine room, "but I want you to see for yourself. Look." I pointed out each of the machines and showed the blank screens and silent motors. I kept them clear of the main power switch that had been off since first thing that morning. "Oh," I said, pulling my phone out of my pocket and pretending that a message had just arrived. "I need to deal with this. Wait here, please. I will be right back." I slipped down beyond the machines at the end of the room, into the paper storage room, and out the back door, locking it silently behind me. In the alley that ran behind my shop, I crouched down in the dust, behind the wall. When I was sure there was nobody around who could hear me, I made a genuine call on my phone. "Hello? Oluwatoyin, I am well," I said. I was surprised that I was out of breath. "I hope you are not harmed. What happened?" "I am well, thank God." I told them that the machines were broken and gave them the flash drive back. I said I had not looked at it and apologized. "Did they believe you?" I paused. I heard a car start up nearby. "Kaode, where are you?" "I am outside in the street around the back," I whispered. When I told them that I could not take on their job, one of them flared up. He started shouting, saying that I was lying and that the machines were all working yesterday. I took them into the machine room and showed them that nothing was on, but I do not think they believed me. "So how did you get them to leave?" "I didn't. When they were talking together, I pretended that I had something to attend to, so I walked off and slipped out the back door. I think I just heard them leaving now. As soon as I close the shop, I will come home." "Do you think it is settled?" "With God's help, I hope so." 4. Unwelcome Visitors. Oluwatoyin. Ever since a group of militants abducted 276 girls from a high school in northeast Nigeria in 2014, the whole world has known the name Boko Haram. As the Nigerian Taliban, the West African cousin of ISIS, Boko Haram's aim is to establish an Islamic State or caliphate in my homeland. Ruthless and wicked, Boko Haram fighters are the type of people who post videos online of men they have captured being decapitated. The kind of animals who do not just abduct schoolgirls, but use many of them as suicide bombers. As Nigeria's capital, Abuja has a long and bloody history with Boko Haram. There have been so many attacks that it is hard to keep count. But some are impossible to forget, like the 2011 bombing of the UN headquarters in the city that killed 24 people. Later that same year, on Christmas Day, a Boko Haram suicide bomber detonated his vest in a packed church, killing almost 40. Another attack was used as cover for a prison break, while in 2015 there was a bomb blast so close to my office that I could feel the heat as I was hurried out onto the street by our security team. For days the hospitals were full of the injured and dying. For weeks we braced ourselves for the next attack, flinching at every siren, hating every loud and innocent bang. Long before Audiobook received his unwelcome visit, daily life in Abuja had changed because of Boko Haram's attacks. Every shopping mall and movie theater now had airport-style security. Our church had even started employing masked armed guards who would check every adult entering the building before each service. We had no choice but to live with it. It became normal to see armed guards checking shopping carts or to pull your car over at a checkpoint. But every so often something happened to remind us that the threat was real and that it was ever increasing. The day when the boys were sent home from school was precisely one of those times. Boko Haram had sent a message threatening to attack another school in the city, and as a result, the government decided to close all the schools. The boys were kept out for almost a whole week, and when they did return to the school gates, reluctantly, of course, they were not greeted by the usual cluster of teachers with bright smiles and clipboards, but by soldiers with stern faces and machine guns. Boko Haram was a pack of hyenas lurking in the shadows. With every attack they launched, they edged closer, and their snarls and growls grew louder. We had hoped that they would leave or that the government would somehow find a way to contain or even defeat them. But after Audiobook came home with their flash drive, we knew that they were actively looking to publicize their intentions and flood the streets and mosques with thousands of posters stirring up hatred and inciting violence. We could no longer hide from the truth. They were coming. The only questions were how long it would be until they attacked and how close we would be to their target. After they visited the print shop the second time and my husband escaped out the back, Audiobook chose to work from home for a few days. I went to the bank as usual, taking the boys to school on the way. Part of me was nervous and felt the urge to panic every time I saw Audiobook's name appear on my phone. But as the days passed and nothing dramatic happened, it became a little easier to tell myself that the threat had passed as well. Either the men had believed Audiobook's lie or at least had decided to find a printer who was willing to help them. Christmas passed by, and the new year began. Audiobook returned to work, the boys resumed school, and life settled back into the usual rhythm. I was at home one night watching a movie. It was dark already, the boys were asleep in their room, my father had returned to his home, and Audiobook was meeting with a client at the Sheraton in town. When I heard a gentle knock on the front door, I checked the time. 9 o'clock. Audiobook must have forgotten his keys. The second that I unlocked the door, it burst into me. 2 men forced their way inside. "Lie down," shouted one of them. "Don't look up. Where's the pastor?" Their question made no sense to me, but I was too terrified to speak. I covered my head with my hands, waiting for one of them to hit me, hoping that the boys stayed asleep. One of the men came and stood beside me. I could see his shoes just beside my head. "The pastor," he hissed. His voice reminded me of broken glass. "Where is he?" I don't know any pastor here," I stammered. I could feel tears on my cheeks. The other man started to search the living room, moving heavily as he opened drawers and threw things on the floor. I tried to keep track of him, knowing that as long as he was still in the room and the other one was right beside me, my boys might at least have a chance of staying safe. The man beside me knelt down. I did not want to look at him directly, so I stared at the pistol that was right beside my face. "Your husband," he said slowly, turning the gun so that it was pointing at me. "Where is he?" When I spoke, I did not recognize my own voice. It sounded so far away. "Not here." "Where is his laptop?" "With him." He stood up and walked across the room. The sound of the other man searching stopped, and I listened as they talked. If they left the room and headed back toward the bedrooms, I would have to do something to distract them. What do we do now? Use her as a message for her husband? Until then, I'd been confused. Part of me had thought, hoped, even, that this was just a typical robbery. But when they started talking about the laptop and using me to send a message, I guessed it was something to do with the poster. And then when I heard one of them speak in Arabic, I had no doubt. In that moment, kneeling on the floor, my hands cradling my head, fighting for breath, I wondered what type of message they might want to send Audiobook. Might they be about to rape me? Kill me? Was this how I would end up, as one of those people whose death they videoed and posted online? Out of nowhere, I heard myself utter one of the few Arabic phrases that I remembered from my childhood. Atuwasul, Ilake, I'm begging you. I wasn't sure if they would listen to me or understand what I was saying, but I carried on all the same. Atuwasul, Ilake. Atuwasul, Ilake. Atuwasul, Ilake. The shoes reappeared beside me. Are you a Muslim? I did not hesitate for 1 second. The life flowed from my mouth as freely as the tears from my eyes. Yes, 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 I am. The room fell silent. The shoes moved away from me. Let's go. As soon as I heard the men leave, I ran to the door and locked it. I checked that the boys were still asleep, then searched for my phone among the pile of papers on the floor. When Audiobook picked up, I could hear the sound of the hotel bar in the background. I did not want to make him panic, but I wanted my husband home as soon as possible. So I told him as simply and calmly as I could that some men had come to the house looking for him. He asked me what they looked like. I had only received a glimpse of them as they burst through the door, but I tried my best. The bigger one pushed through the door, but it was the smaller one who had the gun. Where are they now? I heard the fear enter his voice. Gone. Are they in the compound still? I don't know. I have not left the house. Should I check? No. Stay inside. I'm coming.